Half Whit again is sponsored by the Weekly 50 Quiz. How's this for a Friday morning? You wake up, get your coffee, sit on the couch, go on your phone, type in the Weekly 50. You've got yourself a brand new 50-question quiz right there for you. Do the quiz, finish your coffee, get yourself ready for work, jump in the car. What else has been released on a Friday morning? A brand new episode of Half Whit. Every Friday morning, the Weekly 50 drops a brand new quiz. You can do it with people at work. You can do it on the weekend with some friends over having a few drinks. You've got options when you do it. But the thing is, you've only got 7 days until a brand new 50-question quiz is out. Also, during the weeks, they're chucking on quiz nights everywhere around Adelaide. So please go to their Instagram, the Weekly 50, type it in Google, and get around the Weekly 50 quiz. And get around Half Whit as well. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Half Whit. I am your host, Matt Whitford. Thank you to all of you that have been listening from the start, but also a very warm welcome to any new listeners. And what a great episode to join Half Whit, by the way. Two-time Olympic swimmer, two-time Commonwealth Games swimmer, Ryan Mitchell joins us. Ryan and I could have spoken for 3 hours, so we've done very well to get this down to about an hour and 20. Ryan is going to tell you his story about growing up in the country, moving to Adelaide, and then his journey to become a professional swimmer. But what I love the most about what you're about to listen to is Ryan's life post-swimming. He's a fantastic human being. You are really going to love this episode. So without further ado, enjoy episode 6 with Ryan Mitchell. Ryan Mitchell, welcome to Half Whit.
Good to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Now, Ryan, you're born on the 24th of April, 1977, making you 48. Having a birthday the day before Anzac Day, the public holiday must have been come in handy a few times.
Yeah, good to have a day off after that, that's for sure.
Ryan, where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Port Augusta and was there, grew up until I was 9, and then we moved to Adelaide. So had a good childhood there. Really great place. I only have really good fond memories actually of being a kid in town. Don't get back there much these days, but it was a good fun place to grow up as a kid.
Yeah, I believe there was the Ryan Mitchell swimming pool named after you as well. So, and just getting back to swimming quickly, you begin swimming lessons like most children do. When was it that you started to show that you could seriously swim?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure whether exactly when it was. I mean, I think a country kid's sort of main prerogative is to do sport while the sun's up. So we were doing everything, Dad was a good footy player, great footy player. And
who did you play for?
For Central Augusta.
Yep.
The mighty Blood and Tars.
Yes.
So, footy was a clear pathway for us as kids. Me and my brother played. We played basketball, and everyone swam in the summer. So we were all up there. It was really a social thing. And the country carnival vibe is in summer, every weekend you go on somewhere else and you would race, a 50 free or yards, depending on which pool it was. And then you would do the BBB, handicap, backstroke, breaststroke or butterfly, and you had to choose one and race that. And so breaststroke was kind of the one left on the end of the list. I'm not going to do backstroke. Outdoors, can't see where we're going. Butterfly too hard. Breaststroke was it. And so I think you just hone your craft through racing as a young fella, and then you start winning a few races here and there and do a few more. And so I think by kind of 7, 8, 9, something like that, you're starting to come to town and do the country versus city races. So I think it was probably around then where you go, actually, I can swim okay. I can win a race or two. But it was still just for fun, really, at that stage.
Yeah. And you attend Mitchell Park Primary School, which is now Clovelly Park, and Marion High School, which is no longer. But you moved to Sassy when you were 15. That would have been a pretty cool experience, very different to what Sassy's like today. But I guess what was that like? Obviously, that's when you really started to take your swimming extremely seriously and being around some other incredible athletes as well.
Yeah, I think that Sassy was amazing. I moved there when I was 15 or 16. And the few years before that, I was swimming for a club called James Aquatic, which was sort of born out of the Grange Surf Club kind of crew. So shout out to the guys at Grange, who are still, my best circle of mates, and have been there through the whole process. There was some really excellent age group champions that have just gone on to win multiple age group medals. So I went and swam there from sort of 12 to 15, 12 to 16-ish, something like that. And I think by that stage had already sort of won national age group championships in the 200 breaststroke, but was only kind of training, 5-6 days a week because my brother and I moved to Adelaide from Port Augusta with mum when mum and dad separated, and she was working shift work as a nurse. And so, I trained when I could. In hindsight, it's probably the thing that actually made the progression through into sort of the next phase of my career. It made it happen quite quickly because I hadn't really trained, as hard as perhaps some of the other kids were at that sort of 12, 13, 14. They were already doing 10, 11 sessions a week. So that really started when I shifted to Sassy and joined the squad with Glenn Berringen as coach, and also with Phil Rogers.
Yep. And you're trying to still do school as well at the same time. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about professional swimmers, is that the amount of time you spend in the water, you've still got you've got to work as well on the side. So I'll go straight away to when you were 16, Ryan, and you qualify for the 1994 Commonwealth Games in Victoria, British Columbia, as a 16-year-old. Most 16-year-olds are, year 11, year 12, figuring out what subjects they're going to be doing. But I'm assuming that would have been your real breakout moment for you, knowing that, you're now a fully professional swimmer and you'll be competing against the big guys.
Yeah, exactly. To whatever degree.
That's just Nelly the guard dog.
Yeah, sorry about that. To whatever degree, professional swimming was in 1994. That was starting to sort of head that direction. Kieran Perkins and Hayley Lewis in particular. Two really big names, Susie O'Neill, Sam Riley. They were really sort of leading the charge of making this, trying to make it a professional sport. For a 16-year-old, not me. I remember. Having to find the way to bridge the gap between being an age grouper to being, ready to represent your country internationally. And there was not really any sort of youth wedge that helped you to bridge, Youth Commonwealth Games or Youth World Championships, Youth Olympics like there are now, which is, such a more sensible way, I think, actually for, elite youth to find a pathway. But for us, it was, the year before you're racing age nationals, the next year, you're racing to go and race at the Commonwealth Games in an open competition. And so, in that 200 final, I finished third by 300ths, from the fourth place getter, and you needed to finish top three in order to be eligible for selection. And then it just still came down to the selectors, whether they were willing to take a chance on you. And so I guess as a 16-year-old, they're going, well, this is probably a time to give him a shot.
Yep.
So they put their faith in me, which was, it's great. And that sort of set the trajectory really for the next 6 or 7 years.
And you're off to your first Commonwealth Games. Was there any, I guess, Australian swimmers that you instantly just took your breath away, you looked up to straight away? You mentioned Kieran Perkins before, and yes, my family, we did drink the milk that he was advertising. So was there anyone, might have been Kieran or anyone else that you just literally latched onto and I guess tried to copy to an extent?
I think that actually Rod Lawson was probably that one for me. Everyone was impressive. You go to a competition like that, and the Australian swim team is a hard team to make anyway. So if you're already making the team, then you're pretty high up the world rankings before you even leave the shore, because that's just the standard of the competition. It's the standard of the team. So everybody was at an amazing standard. So everywhere you looked, across the men's and women's team, they were really, really high quality and just brought so much professionalism and just another bar that, I was not used to, even though I had great exposure also through racing and training with Phil. But to see it more broadly was a real eye opener. And so when we, got put into the breaststroke squad, I'm training with Phil and I'm training with Sam Riley and Rebecca Brown, who broke the world record in the women's 200 breast in that trials. But Rod was he had been to a couple of Commonwealth Games and 92 Olympics in Barcelona, he just had a real knack of knowing what to say at the right time, to put his arm around you and say, right, we need to do this now. And it was fantastic, to have someone like him to shepherd your way for those first, few months of being in the team was really invaluable.
Because you're spending a lot of time away from home, away from your family, and you're 16 while this is all going on. So you're in in Victoria, in British Columbia, in the 200-meter breaststroke final. You come fourth, so not a bad effort for your first Commonwealth Games. Phil Rogers. Sorry, who won the gold in that one?
So Nick Gillingham won the gold, and Phil got silver in the 200. Canadian fellow finished third, and I finished fourth. A couple of seconds off the pack, but these guys were already Olympians and Olympic medalists, so it was pretty decent. I think I broke the Australian record twice that day. I think I swam, at least for my age group, because I was still an age grouper, so I broke the 17-year age group record twice that day. So I had an okay meet, finishing fourth on my first time around was awesome.
Yeah, and a good springboard for you moving forward.
Yeah.
What was a typical day of training like for you, Ryan? So, we can talk about, not necessarily just before the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, but more so just a regular, week of training. Like, is it you're doing multiple sessions, multiple times in the pool each day, or like, what does it look like?
Yeah, it obviously depends on the time of the season, but in a peak build up, you're training 10 times a week in the water, so it's morning and night, and we would do that 6 days a week. So Sundays was the only day off. So I think we'd had a morning off during the week, so it would be twice a day, most on all weekdays except one. So we'd have, I think it was Thursday mornings we were off. Saturday morning we'd train. So that was 10 times a week in the water, upwards of, 70K, depending on, again, where you're really at in terms of the prep. And then every other day you'd be doing something. So it's some sort of dry land, calisthenics, body weight, sort of stretching, med ball, those types of things, plyometric. And then on the other days you're doing gym. So it's sort of, 3 dry land, 3 gym, 10 in the water. And then a couple of times at the physio, putting yourself back together so you can tear it all apart again. So, it's a full-time job, just doing that. And you would train at 5 a.m. So if you needed to go to work or go to school or do whatever else
have a social life as well.
Yeah, that was not really, high on the list, at least in terms of full prep. In the offer you would have a couple of weeks to let your hair down, but other than that, it was pretty rigorous.
And are you learning the importance of diet as you go, or is this drilled into you, I guess, from a young age?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's, mum's a nurse, heavily, shaped sort of how the home life looked, but also as you start to go through SASI and into the national team, there's dietitians and, they're not following you around, but they're giving you a pretty decent guidance in terms of, what's expected and what would work and how that would help. So, in that part of it, it's, it was important for sure. And we tried to push the edges as much as we could, really. We had a great physiologist, Bernard Savage, who's worked at high performance, both with us in swimming, but he's gone on to work with Australian rowing, Australian triathlon. He's currently at hockey.
Yep.
So it helps to have people like that around that really take care of all of those things for you.
Yeah. So the lead in to the Atlanta Olympics, by now you're just focusing on the 200 breaststroke, or was the 100 always there, or did you just instead choose, no, I'm going to do my best in the 200?
Yeah, I think that's, I think like the swimming, I always sort of, at least my best description is that the stroke chooses you.
Yep.
And then your genetics actually determines what's possible, and I was not a big muscular guy, and always had a much better endurance engine than I did as a sprinter. So, at state level, I would do everything, even multiple strokes. At national level, I would still swim the 100 and 200, but at international level, it was only the 200. Apart from, I raced it in Kuala Lumpur in '98, the Com Games. So it was really the 200 breaststroke was my main thing internationally, and that sort of stayed with me right the way through.
So the lead into the Atlanta Olympics, where were the Australian qualifiers?
The trials were in Sydney.
Yep.
At Homebush.
Yep. And you qualify for the 200-meter breaststroke. It must have been an incredible feeling to know that you're going to be on a plane to your first Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a surreal moment, really. It's one of those things. I remember it. First day, year 8, you do these, introductions. The awkward things. Well, I say year 8, it's now year 7.
Yep.
But you know what I mean. First day of going to the new environment. Introduce yourself. What are your interests and what do you want to do with yourself? And I remember saying, I want to go to the Olympics, and everyone just laughing. It's like, and that just burns into your memory. Those things, and this idea of also being motivated by things that people think you can't do was always really one of those kind of inner drive things, going, okay, I can show you that I can do this. And so, a lot of water under the bridge from year 8 through until actually that moment in 96. But yeah, we knew had a qualifying time to make. It's again, they were only really wanting to take athletes that finished top 8 in the world. So we had a high bar to cross over to even be considered for selection. And Phil and I ended up dead heating in the final. So that was both an awesome thing to race and to finally be up on par with the training partner who, he was at that stage already, was an Olympic bronze medalist from Barcelona. So to earn that ticket was fantastic.
And he'd beaten you by a couple of seconds a few years earlier. So good that you know how much you're improving as well. You get to Atlanta, like the atmosphere in the Olympic Village just must have been incredible and something you've never experienced.
Yeah, out of control, really. There's you hear the stories, and I'd been on the team already for a couple of years by that stage, so had heard firsthand from those that had been there, and you watch the replays, but nothing really prepares you for that moment when you sort of turn up to an Olympic Village where we sort of took over the University of Georgia. The whole campus was the Olympic Village, and you go to the food hall, and there's just top tier athletes everywhere as far as the eyes can see, and it's actually really overwhelming. And so we had to a fair bit of time trying to practice that idea of going, what is it going to be like when you're in there? And even though you try to visualize those things and keep yourself calm, I was never really one to be awestruck so much about by athletes, but the whole environment and the whole thing was pretty overwhelming. Yeah.
I can imagine the US Dream Team in 1996 in their home Olympics, they must have been, were they in the Olympic Village or?
No, that was always a little bit too low for the Dream Team. But we went and watched them play, went and watched the Boomers, and
what a game. Shane Hill, yes.
Stick it up to Charles Barkley. It was amazing. So we were there watching them, I roomed with Dan Kowalski, who is a big basketball fan and was really good friends with a number of the guys in the Boomers. So we had good access to the tickets to go and see them. And so it was those things, post-competition, they're actually some of my fondest memories of the games, like the swimming part of it. And of course, you spend your whole life working towards something. It's an amazing thing to go and compete, but to go and celebrate your other teammates and your other peers was also fantastic.
And watching Shane Hill, he was just draining triples left, right, and centre, but he was actually taking it up to him and really standing up to the US, who absolutely dominated us in the end. Good highlights of that on YouTube.
Indeed.
Just getting back to your swimming though, so the whole, I guess, the heat structure in Atlanta was in qualifying for the final. It was sort of quite cutthroat, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't remember when the sort of heat semi-finals thing changed. So I could probably look that up, but it's not. It's that format for Atlanta was, everyone raced in the mornings. The fastest 8 times went through into the final, and then the next fastest 8 raced in a B final. So it was like a consolation prize. And yeah, I think I missed by not much. I think you were saying 0.1 or something like that, 1300ths, which was hard. I had a really good run in. I was in really good form, and was sort of, at least was, sort of starting to draw some parallels to my coach who won Olympic medal in the 200 breast in 84. And I was the same age as him. It was kind of like this thing. We were back in America, so the press were having a great field day, sort of writing already the script around how this was going to play out, and it just didn't play out like that for me. So it was really heartbreaking, that heat, and a really hard thing to get yourself up for a consolation final, which really, in the end of the day, doesn't really mean anything. But you're there, you're fit, you might as well have a race. And so I remember racing that, and doing okay. I think I was 3rd in the race, but finished your 11th overall. And
your fellow countryman, who you dead heated with, Phil Rogers at the trials, he comes 5th in the final. Did you swim any relays in Atlanta or
no?
So your swimming programs ended up always the first week of that would be the best thing about being an Olympic swimmer. Unlike the athletics where they have to wait till the second week. Does this just mean party time and,
Yeah, at least it used to be party time. Nowadays, they do it a bit differently. I think because COVID's kind of given them the excuse that you can fly athletes in and out, and they've seemed to have really sort of truncated that whole, stay around, hang around, be in the village, experience everything, which I think is a real shame. I get it for cost reasons and for the complexities of managing the games. But like I said, other than competing and living out your dreams in your own sport, some of my fondest memories and also greatest friendships have been sitting on the sidelines, both having a beer or two, watching watching the Woodies with Mark Philippoussis and Clemmy and Fides, or going to the Hockey Roos and watching Juliet play and them win, and these memories, you can't buy them.
And supporting your other athletes,
amazing.
As well.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing about that sort of idea of team. It's very different as a swimming athlete. It's an individual sport. You travel as a team, and also the Olympic team's called a team, but you're wearing the same gear.
Yep.
But my performance didn't have any impact on what Juliet did or what the Boomers did. But those moments you got to celebrate and go and cheer them and support them. And that was when you really did feel part of something bigger. And the fact that they're not able to do that as much or as easily nowadays, I think is a real shame. I think there's a real missed opportunity there.
Yeah. So you finished the Atlanta Olympics. Do you go on a bit of a break? Like, obviously, you do a bit of traveling because you have earned a break. I'm assuming you would have been training nonstop for, quite a number of years. So, what do you get up to post Atlanta Olympics?
Yeah, it was actually a real decompression. Actually, I had a good few months off after '96. The lead into Atlanta was tough. My dad died in '95. He was 44 and died of a heart attack, so it was really brutal. And really hard to sort of keep pushing through and keep training through. We had staging events in '95 to try to get yourself ready for the Olympics, and of course the Olympics. So, whilst I think there was a lot of unprocessed grief that still hadn't really properly had the chance to come out. So it was just an opportunity to just let swimming completely go for a few months. So I think Phil and I actually, he was sponsored by Mazda at the time. So he's like, well, let's get a car, we're off. And so we went and drove, all through the east coast of Australia and up to Queensland, went through the snow. It was amazing. We had a really great trip and a great breakaway, and just an opportunity to not train and to not really think about anything other than, what's in front of you, and just to really, experience perhaps a little bit of that idea of being a bit disconnected in celebrating your youth. That's what it's about.
Being normal. What I and I'm sure the listeners are still, finding it hard to grapple is that you're a teenager still. You're still 19 years old, and you've had one Commonwealth Games, one Atlanta Olympics, and you finally got some downtime to yourself. And do you instantly then look, 4 years Sydney or 2 years Kuala Lumpur, or like when you get back into training? I can't imagine what that first session would have been like in the pool after a few months off. But are you instantly looking to the next competition, or like how does it work?
Yeah, there's always something on the horizon, and that is a part of it. If you're in a sport where Olympics is the pinnacle, and then your program's kind of set, like every 4 years, and then you work back from that and what are the stepping stones in order to get you there. It was hard work getting back in the pool, and my coaches weren't too happy with the skin folds, when I got back. And I remember just saying to them, you train hard, play hard. That's the motto for the next little while. And we had a competition, Australian short course comp, just before Christmas in '96, and so I'd sort of set my sight on really having a swing at the world record there, short course world record, who Phil held it, and so that was kind of the get back on the horse, but do it in a sort of bit of a low pressure way. So I got myself in good shape in the end, even though I probably wasn't as fit as I was at the Olympics in earlier in the year. But my headspace was in such a better frame of mind, and that probably helped. I met Megan, who's now my wife, in the sort of that post period of coming back from Atlanta. And so, it just sort of talks everything to this idea of balance. I think, when you're just so serious and so one-dimensional about sport, you kind of lose perspective. But actually, friendship had blossomed. Our relationship was forming. I was enjoying myself. and went there in really good shape, but got disqualified in the heats of the 200 for a lazy sort of one-hand turn. So I'm like, okay, well, the whole thing's over, like we've had a chance to do this. So they organised for a time trial to be put on in the evening. So the whole finals competition went through. I wasn't in the final. Someone else won the final. And after the finals, I stood up on my own, did a time trial, and ended up breaking the world record. So broke the world record by 14 hundredths. Just amazing. Like the roof went off the stadium. It was just an absolute perler at the old Melbourne State Swim Centre, which was sort of sliding into the Yarra, but it was just so fast, that pool.
Yep.
It was amazing. And so the next night...
Was it an official world record?
Well, it stood.
Yep.
And that's another story in of itself. But so official world record, it got ratified. Next night we stood up and they've gone, well, everyone's in good form. Why don't we put a relay together? So Adrian Radley, Jeff Hugel, Michael Klim and myself did the 4x1 medley relay, broke the world record. So, I'm sort of training hard, but not really taking it that seriously. Turn up and do, 2 swims, 2 world records. Amazing, like it was just a really one of those moments where I think you sort of try again to recreate what was happening, what was going on, what were you eating, what were you drinking, what were you racing in. It's just that sort of magic collision, I think, of great mindset, enough distraction, but also support outside of the water, but also, training hard, and it just all came together and worked really well.
And you might have been enjoying it more, like all those little things to save some time. You did have a couple of setbacks, I guess, in the lead into the Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games.
Yeah, so 97 didn't go very smoothly. I sort of decided to sit out actually the Pan Pacs in 97. I just needed to get off the back of that. I just didn't want to race for whatever reason. I think it was just time to do something again, just train, but just take it a bit low key. So through the winter was training, but also was playing a bit of mixed netball, and then going for a contest. Looked up, going actually, if I go flat out for that ball, I'm going to absolutely mash that girl that's playing in that position. So I tried to get out the way, lost footing, and then snapped the head of my radius on my left arm.
We've all been injured playing mixed netball. Like it's a rite passage.
It's a hazard, isn't it?
That would have made your training.
Made training pretty hard. So I didn't tell the coach. I went to training the next day. I thought, I'm just going to get in and try here. I had the bag of peas the night before going, this doesn't feel very good. So dived in, first stroke, no good. I knew it was over. So I had to come clean and tell him what happened. So I went to the doctor, found out, got the x-rays, it was broken. And then it's like, well, okay, you can't swim, but you're going to kick. So, we had, the back end of the year to prepare to get ready for World Championship trials. And so I did all of the preparation, for 6 weeks kick on a kickboard. So we were doing 60, 70K a week kick. So, legs and strength and everything in the gym, everything one-handed. So it was just still absolutely full training, but just no using your left arm. So it was crazy times, but also again one of those things. It was a great challenge, so why not? You've got to keep pushing forwards, and that was what I did.
Well, the Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games come around. I remember I was in year 5 at the time, and I did my project on Malaysia and did focus on the Commonwealth Games. Cricket, 10-pin bowling. Would you believe it was there? Do you actually know which city Kuala Lumpur beat to host the games?
I don't.
It was Adelaide.
Was it really?
So you could have been swimming a home Commonwealth Games.
So I'm glad Kuala Lumpur won.
So it would have been a different feel, I guess, being in Kuala Lumpur, like to 2 years earlier. Obviously, there's no US and it's just the Commonwealth states. But you being your second Commonwealth Games, you must have felt a lot more relaxed and, hoping to improve on your fourth from 4 years earlier.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, by that stage, you're right, it's been sort of one at least full cycle through those and had managed to represent the country at least at all of the major internationals and the World Championships, that happened actually earlier in the year in 98. So, yeah, definitely knew what to expect, and also went in with a different set of world rankings. At that stage, I think I was ranked 1 in the world actually going into Kuala Lumpur, so expectations were high. So
you felt start of 98 was probably when you've been swimming your fastest?
Yeah, funnily, like off the back of that broken arm, I went into the World Championships in 98 in January, ranked 26th in the world or something like that, or top 30, like I was an outsider. So I was in the early seeded heats, like I was in the outside lanes where they put, the guys that are, just there to make up the numbers. And I broke the Australian record in the heat, qualified fastest through into the final, had the fastest time in the world. And remember going into the final for that. This was sort of when it was all really building, when things have kind of gone from, okay, you're near and you're close to, okay, you're now at the top of the charts and
in lane 4,
top of the sheet. Yeah, as in lane 4. Home World Championships in Perth, walking out, and I really vividly remember going, okay, this guy's current Olympic champion, Norbert Rosa from Hungary. This guy here is European champion. I was the US champion down there, and just that moment of kind of, okay, we're not playing around anymore. Actually, you're not a kid. This is now at the top of, world swimming in my event. Just wasn't able to put it together. There was clearly distractions, too many things going on. Didn't manage that well enough. But the hardest part was the time in the morning would have won the final. So the guy that won it from the US, Kurt Grope, came over to me afterwards and said, hey, you had us beaten. We watched you warm up. There was no way we were touching you in the final. And so, to know that you have the capability, but actually this is it's a game of, small margins, and you train for years and you get 2 minutes. It's cut and dry, but that's what makes the absolute elite and the people that are able to do it back to back over long periods of time just so impressive. It's a hard thing to stitch together, but that's the game.
Fast forward later that year to the Commonwealth Games, you're up against countryman Simon Cowley in the final. You're the two favourites for the event. You swim at 2:13.2, which I believe was your PB.
Yep.
And Simon touches just 0.07 of a second in front of you. Did you feel like you'd won silver, or did it feel like you'd lost the gold?
Oh, I felt like I lost more than the gold there. That really hurt, that race. It was really painful. What had been in my mind and what we'd been training for and what I continued to train for post that was to break Mike Barrowman's world record. And he swam that at the 91 World Champs in Perth. It was a 2:10.6 something. And so all of the splits were all geared around swimming at 2:10, which no one had been anywhere near that for years. He was just on a different stratosphere. I managed to meet him actually after Sydney 2000, and lovely guy, but just a brute in the water. And so, I went out after it, and that was the plan. And, I'd been much more conservative sort of in my early racing years. But in order to swim that fast, you had to really let go and go out hard. And Simon was an awesome athlete, and had a really, really fast sort of back end, especially back 50 was really, really strong. So I knew he was going to be coming hard at the wall. It's likely that I was going to be going the other way because I really wanted to let go and just try and have a swing, especially after, leaving, that medal on the table in Perth at the start of the year. So I went out like a cut cat, and turned pretty close to one world record pace with 50 to go. But it was just hard, really, really painful. It was
like lactic acid just building up.
The longest 50 I think I've swum. And we lunged for the wall at the same time, but momentum is your friend, in these races. And plenty of people were surprised actually that my name came up second on the board. It looked like I had it won. I think I'd lunged maybe even a touch before, but just out of gas, absolutely out of gas. And he had the momentum and won it and deserved the win, but it was a hard one, like I was pretty keen to go home after hearing the national anthem. And as an Aussie, you hear it, but it was for someone else.
And I guess the double whammy for that was that he got to swim in the 4x100 medley relay, which went on to win gold. So the Commonwealth Games finishes, you're 21 years old. Obviously, you've got your eye on Sydney, which is in 2 years' time, but you're 21 now. Are you studying? Are you working outside of swimming, or is swimming just your full-time job?
Yeah, it was a mixture of all of that, really. I think that at least for my experience here, the school systems really weren't up to speed with the way that they manage, athletes through education these days. And so I decided at that point when I was 16, I made the first team go, well, the sporting window, the opportunity for your body to be as good as it needs to be in order to be able to compete is only so small. You can learn at any stage. So I decided to chase the sport gig and then go back to education at a later point. But I worked in the gaps, and there were certain periods where I just chose to go absolutely full-time swimming, largely in the lead into the major competitions like World Championships and Olympics. But otherwise, I continued to work, to learn, to build skill, to make sure I was doing something to add some craft, and so I wasn't just sitting there going backwards. You needed to do something for post swimming. But and that sort of last 18 months, sort of heading towards Sydney, it was pretty much full time swimming.
He's still living in Adelaide at the time, or?
Yeah, we managed to stay all of my career here, really. Once I'd sort of moved here as a young fella, and once I joined the SASI program, actually people came to us. So we had an amazing breaststroke squad here. We had a really great squad, actually, more broadly, but we were really the sort of breaststroke centre of Australia. So Helen Denman came over from Perth, Nadine Newman came from the East Coast. Phil was here in the first one. I joined after that. Dan Lee came in from NT. So we had a really awesome squad, and managed to stay here. And I saw my career out still racing here in South Australia. Yeah.
What was it like swimming alongside Phil Rogers, a fellow Adelaide boy? Was it that healthy rivalry, or like were you mates, or like?
Yeah, definitely to start with. Like I was the young guy. We're born on the same day, 4 years apart. So he was, on that trajectory earlier than me. So he'd already been through 1990 Com Games in Auckland. I think he actually went he was in Japan in '89. I think when he sort of debuted on the team, he won a bronze in the 100 in Barcelona. So here's a guy that's, absolute world class, training here in Adelaide, and you get an invite to go and train in the same squad. So you just soak all of that in, as a young kid. Who better to learn from than someone that's already been around the block and done that? And he was just a brilliant person to mimic and to try to emulate, and a good person, really good person, and just an awesome competitor. When you sort of talk about the differences that makes up those small, fine margins, you need the people that know how to stitch it together and how to race. And regardless of what happened prep-wise, he was just a racer, an all-out racer, a real machine. But of course, as the times get closer, and as your opportunities to make teams comes down to who wins and who loses, or who finishes first and who finishes second, then that rivalry starts to get a little bit more serious.
That competitiveness.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, that sort of healthy rivalry and friendship sort of started to turn a little bit more into, real competitive nature. I think, in some instances also looking back in an unhealthy way. So Phil decided he left and went to the AIS and trained out of Canberra, which I think was probably the best thing for both of us. And we maintained, a good rivalry and a good healthy rivalry. But many years passed, I've had the opportunity to also kind of write to him and say, hey, I think some of the things that I did when I was growing up, I was a real dick, and I'm really sorry for that, and he said, you know what, don't worry about it. Me too.
Yep.
That was the game. And so, there's lots of time has passed, but we've had an opportunity to reconnect, and I see him not often, but, every now and then. And yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, and he's a really good guy.
You probably pushed each other as well to get, to keep improving too. So the trials for the Sydney Olympics were September 2000. The trials were the year before in Sydney as well, I believe.
Yeah, they were. So they were in March, April, something like that, I think. And the games, are in September. I think we had them definitely in September in Sydney. So the trials are in April. I'm pretty sure. We had the year before the Pan Pacs were in Sydney in '99, so it was a bit of a staging thing, dress rehearsal, exactly. But the main trials for Sydney were in April in Sydney. Yeah.
So you and Regan Harrison qualify for the 200 metre breaststroke. Did you pip him, or?
Yeah, I won that one. Managed to get over the line. It was a pretty bumpy run in. I had started to have some really bad shoulder problems in '99, and we had access to all the great physios on the team and doctors, and we weren't really able to solve what was going on. Had some real inflamed bursa problems. But came across Steve Saunders, he's head of medical now at Geelong. Absolute guru. He for sure kept me out of the operating theatre, but he was just the magic hands that just rebuilt me every week, twice a week, through that period to get me fit and to get me healthy and on the right path. And so, it was, a battle with the body, but also at that time, the Aquablade suits were coming in. So everyone was kind of transitioning out of, the briefest briefs you could find, made out of this sort of elastic paper.
What did you end up swimming the Olympics in?
Olympics, I swam in briefs actually. Yep. I went back old school, but I swam the trials in a sleeveless sort of long leg suit, and I just didn't like it. It just wasn't for me. So it was. You've seen everything, all the other things, with Torpedo and the big black shark, the Adidas suit. So there was a fair bit going on, and people sort of trialing a lot of different things. But it's great to get a win. And book a spot. So that was, part of the job done, I guess.
I'll just be worried about wearing those suits and tearing just before you're about to swim and panicking. But prior to the Olympics, you go into a pre-Olympic camp in Melbourne just to get away from everything that's going on in Sydney prior to the Olympics, because it's getting pretty crazy. I recently read Michael Klim's biography, and for all your listeners, I heavily recommend it, and I have a copy that I'm happy to lend someone. And in regards to that camp, he stated that training was becoming lighter and lighter, and therefore there was less time in the pool and more downtime for you all. Now, Michael Klim quotes, "We amuse ourselves with gaming, movies and music, as well as team bonding activities. Breaststroker Ryan Mitchell produces a killer version of the Green Day song Good Riddance, Time of Your Life, that he can play an acoustic guitar, reminding us that we are not just swimmers." By the way, I'm just going to try and convince Ryan to give us another rendition of that at the end of the podcast. But it must have been great bonding with your Michael Klims, your Ian Thorpes, your Grant Hackett's, your Kieran Perkins. Did you get a good chance to mix in with all the other swimmers on the team, or were you just sticking around mainly the breaststrokers?
Oh no, we mixed heavily. It's a pretty unique environment. I think anybody that's been involved in an elite environment knows just how much of a pressure cooker that space is. And you need to find any opportunity in any environment in any way you can to decompress and to try to, just be as human as you can, even though we know that we're not living a very normal, environment. I think that's your thing, isn't it? Normal people doing it is quite an extraordinary thing.
It is the theme of the podcast. Ordinary people, extraordinary things.
Built that in. Well done. Good one. So things like, one of the unique things about our team is that most of us can play the didge. Because one of the masseurs, he was really heavily into Indigenous culture and would always travel with the didgeridoo, or yidaki. We should be sort of saying that, I guess. The Ghana people won't be too happy with me for calling it a didgeridoo, but nonetheless, the yidaki. So we can all play, because while we're here waiting for treatment or waiting for massage, then that was the lying around, and so we would just do that.
And there were no smartphones. You didn't have smartphones or iPads or,
Thank God for that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We
had a proper youth.
You had to talk with people and bond with them. So
definitely. So we did that, and a lot of us played guitar because there were guitars lying around, and so these were the things that you did, and so that's where it came from. And so a whole number of us, just did that for fun. And so I think Klimmy's being very kind.
Yep.
But the guitars came with us a lot, and so we used to do those things, and it was great, awesome memories, and they're really good people. At the end of the day. I think that's the thing for me that is, the biggest takeaway is that you've got just some of the most genuinely brilliant humans that I was able to call my friends who, a lot of people experience them in 2D. They see them, at the cutting edge as elite humans, and they clearly are, but they're underneath that, they're also just amazing people.
Did you, when you're in a room with them, when you're in a room with Thorpe or Michael Klim or Jeff Hugel, are you saying to yourself, that's Ian Thorpe, that's Michael Klim? Or are you saying to yourself, that guy's famous, shit, does that make me famous? Or I know you're obviously not going to be starstruck because you're also a champion swimmer, a professional swimmer, but were there times where you're just sort of pinching yourself going, I'm in a room with, perhaps the 3 or 4 greatest Australian male swimmers ever?
I'm for whatever reason, I never really felt that. And like I said, I think I mentioned before, I've never really had sporting idols or kind of had that real sort of superhero status feeling. For me, it was just that, and I don't know why. That's maybe something for me to investigate, actually. But I'm heavily aware of what was happening and just how unique that environment was. And that's largely because I was able to experience it, but from the inside outside. When you're in the bus or you're walking into the stadiums and you watch just how they get mobbed and how they get treated, it wasn't for me. I got given a bit of a free pass to, go around the outside, to be quiet, to do your own thing, but they were dealing with a whole other different set of intensities, and they, are genuine superstars.
Yeah.
Especially Thorpe. I mean, he was just of another level, both as an athlete, but also the global stage he commanded. He was a superstar, like too big for the country, really, in a lot of ways. I think, so much pressure gets put onto them, and, how Climmy swam at 98 in the Worlds and just winning everything, put them into a different stratosphere. So I was really, really aware of the height and the levels that they were achieving, no doubt.
And Thorpe was about to go up another cog as well. So the Olympics comes around now. I guess for you, we were just talking about it before, but the advantage of not being a swimmer on the opening night was meaning that you're able to attend the opening ceremony. That would have just been next level.
Yeah, I think the whole run-in was just extraordinary. You talked about Melbourne. We had a private bus that took us under the MCG, so I got to watch the Mighty Bombers beat Melbourne, at the grand final in 2000, which was just epic. And that just ran in all the way to the games. And
was that Essendon's last finals win, or have they had one since then?
I'm not sure, Matt. Not sure. You're a footy man. You would know more than me.
I think it's been 21 years now. So
I think so. No, look, it was really special, and I think everyone had, and we marched in '96, and I was rooming with Dan Kowalski again, and we're on the march in to the opening ceremony, and I thought, oh, this is going to be crazy. The volunteers outside are going absolutely mental. Host nation comes in last. So we were already deaf by the time we kind of got there, because as you sort of come funneling into the main stadium, and it got sort of underneath the concrete, it was just echoing and going crazy. And, they called out Australia. We were sort of towards the back and sort of walked through, and we were sort of both looking at each other going, no, it's actually not that loud. There's like 120,000 people or something in that stadium. And it really wasn't that loud, and we couldn't really work out why. So, we took it all in and did our lap, and then, we had to sort of come right towards the front underneath the flame where Kathy was going to ultimately light it, and then the dignitaries come up to speak, and then it goes quiet, and it was only then we realised just how loud it was. And there was only one thing more impressive than 120,000 people going mental. It's 120,000 people going quiet. It was just like hairs on the back of your neck stuff. It was absolutely extraordinary. So happy that we got to experience that, because a lot of the swim team didn't. If you were racing day one, you couldn't march.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so good.
Was that before when Kathy lit the flame? Did the flame get stuck? I reckon.
Yeah.
Did everyone know at the time it had been stuck, or was
it?
Yeah.
No one knew what the theatre was, but it certainly was a bit of an awkward pause. But yeah.
So the first day of the Olympics was on a Saturday, September the 16th. So it's incredible that they had the AFL Grand Final before the Olympics. So usually it's the last Saturday in September. But that first night, you're at the Sydney National Aquatic Centre watching that incredible 4x100 metre relay. Now, I really urge all of our listeners, obviously, when you finish the podcast, so don't stop doing this right now, but please go to YouTube, type in 4x100 metre freestyle relay 2000 Sydney Olympics. Ryan, you were there. Like, just describe, because I remember watching it on TV with my sister Jane, my mum and dad. Just describe what it was like being at the pool.
It was absolutely electric. I mean, at that stage, I think that was the biggest swimming crowd that anyone had swum in front of in the world. They really punched out the back of the stands, and it was huge.
I don't know if I read like 17 to 20,000.
Yeah, I can't remember the number. It was definitely in the teens. It was just monstrous, and under a full roof, it was just so loud. Home crowd, anything that we did, they went absolutely mental for. So it was already on fire. I think Thorpe had won the 400 free already that night. Yes. So the crowd were pumping.
I reckon he beat Peter van den Hoogen band. Yes, the best name in swimming.
Yep. And so and there was all of this talk on the way in. With Gary Hall Jr. saying that they're going to smash us like guitars. So the rivalry was huge. It was really on edge, and they were clearly the favourites, the US team. But the Aussies had a plan, and they thought that they were good enough to do it. And Clemmy leading off, he was number one in the world. Was clearly the guy to look out for. And
he broke the world record.
Broke the world record in the lead off. And we were just going absolutely mental from there, and it just the race got better and better, didn't it?
Chris Feidler swam second, I believe.
Chris Feidler second, Ash Callis third, and then I think that was the way it went. And their plan was like back end, like the third 25 needed to be the one that won it for us, because by the time you get to the end, you're never going to let them come over you. But they were really all about that third 25. And just extraordinary, like they held it together and held off, their opponents, and then left it down to Gary, Hall, and Thorpe. And the story, if you haven't watched it, like you said, go and have a look. But he gave him a good body length and a bit, and just mowed him down. It was just extraordinary.
I've just never seen anything like it, because the race was over. There's 20 meters to go, and he's a full body length behind. You were front row.
Yeah, that's probably the time that I made the Olympics actually the most, I think, is that highlights package. I was next to Dawn Fraser on the pool deck, and just going absolutely batshit, really. It was, everyone just lost it, completely lost it. So I was screaming, everyone was screaming. It was a really fantastic event to be, one for them to be a part of, but for us to spectate, it was fantastic.
I feel that's just one of those nights where you just know where you were. And I know exactly where I was at home with the family, and just feeling, I think one thing that Americans have over us Australians is that they are extremely patriotic, and they love, their American flags and, being from America. But that night was just bloody hell. It was good to watch us get it done. And also, watching Roy and HG, The Dream, that was a staple every night during the Sydney Olympics. And then, I remember they had Gary Hall Jr. on, and, might have been Roy HG goes, "Now, Gary, did you smash us like guitars?" But Gary, full credit to him, he was actually, quite good about it all, and, very complimentary of the Australians. But getting back to your individual performance, Ryan, you're in the 200-meter breaststroke. There's 7 heats. So a couple of days later, you're in heat 5, and unlike Atlanta, the top 16 go through to the semi-finals. If only it was like that in Atlanta. So you win your heat with a 2:14.69, making you the 5th fastest. Regan Harrison, your fellow countryman, is the 7th fastest. So you're both in the same semi-final, along with the current Olympic champion, Norbert. How do I pronounce his name again?
Rosa.
We'll go with Rosa, the Hungarian. And he's won gold 4 years earlier. And, you're in that semi-final. The fastest 8 make the final. Now, it was the first semi-final, I believe. You come 4th in a time of 2:13.87. So did you think it was going to be good enough to make the final?
I didn't really. Going in the first semi is never fun, and it really it's times, but of course, the way that they divide them up is that they fill up the lanes, equally across both semis. So if you're finishing 4th in the first one, it's going to be right on the wire. So it's, even though the time got faster from heats to the first semi, I thought I was in a bit of danger. But in the end, it was good enough. Just managed to sneak into lane 8.
Snuck in 8th fastest. So, it must have been great. Obviously 4 years earlier you weren't able to, but knowing that you're going to be in an Olympic final, get much sleep that night?
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. I probably think not, or not much. It had been. I couldn't have done anything more in the lead into those games. I think, I had some injuries and I had some illnesses, but I think it was something like 3.5 years I never missed a session. Come injury or illness, I turned up at the pool. So from a preparation standpoint, I knew that if there was ever going to be one of those moments where you're able to, get your best out, it was
leave it all out there.
This is the opportunity. And 3 weeks earlier at that staging camp in Melbourne, we had a hit out, untapered. So we sort of just finished the main block of our work before we'd sort of gone into that 3-week taper. And it wasn't quite my fastest race, but I won that staging event against a number of the internationals that had turned up there, swam 2:13 something. But it was definitely the best race I'd ever put together, in terms of tactics and strategy, in terms of how I felt, how I was able to really finish and hit the wall. like perfectly out of gas, not some in the tank and not starting to fade. So I knew I was in good shape. Everyone else around me knew I was in good shape. So things were looking really good. The difficulty with, what you do around who you get assigned to in terms of coaching on the team comes down to your qualification. And I didn't swim fast enough in the trials in April to get my coach on the team. So you get assigned to another coach. And I'd swum with him before.
So who was your original coach?
Glenn Berringen was the coach here, but I was training under Scott Volkers, he was Sam Riley, Susie O'Neill's coach.
Yep.
So he knows how to get them ready to win medals, and they've won multiple, world and Olympic medals and broken world records. So, he's a fantastic coach in his own right. I had a program to follow. And, there's certain things that we tweaked on the way in, which probably meant that I just overreached and overtrained a touch in the taper. And really at that point, you need to be stripping work out, not putting more in. So by the time I got to Sydney, I already knew that I was not fresh enough as I needed to be.
Yep.
And you can't quickly freshen, So my feeling already going in was this was going to be tough.
Yep.
Which was just heartbreaking, because already knowing that you're trying to go into the race of your life
and be positive still, and
knowing that I just don't think my body's ready was really tough, especially after such a great prep and being ready 3 weeks out. So the taper wasn't perfect, but again, that's sport. So lane 8, I just let it rip.
Yep. And Kieran Perkins had done it 4 years earlier in the 1500.
He's proof that it can be done. So it doesn't really matter. A lane in the final is a lane in the final. I think I turned within reach. I was second, maybe at the 100. I think I can't recall, but I was pretty close. I haven't studied these things. That the memories are probably not brilliant. But yeah, faded and finished 8th, and wasn't as fast as I wanted.
A 2 minute 14 second flat. So
yeah.
You finish 8th, and Regan actually nearly pinched a medal. So, was there any disappointment at all? Like, I guess you've made an Olympic final, which is a great achievement. But was there any disappointment, or did you like we said earlier, I gave it all I could, and that's the best I could do?
Oh no, I was completely broken after that race. Like that was the end. Like I remember touching the wall and turning around, seeing the time and the position, knowing that your time in sport is so small. And whilst I wasn't, I think at the end of that window, I still had other opportunities. It was World Championships the year after, Com Games in 2002. The amount of effort and the amount of work that it takes to be at that level needs absolutely everything. And by the time I'd got out and walked to the warm down pool, I sent a message to my wife going, I can't do this anymore.
Yep.
So it was over. Like it was, as soon as I touched the wall, I knew it was over.
Yep. What you did swim in the medley heats a couple of days later, and that must have been hard, knowing that no matter, because obviously Regan finished above you in the final, no matter how quickly you pretty much swim in the heat, you're probably not going to be in the final, which the boys did go on and win the silver medal. So Matt Welsh, Regan Harrison, Jeff Hugel, and Michael Klim, they won the silver medal in the 4x 200-metre medley relay. Sorry, 200 relay. Was it weird, like, even though you didn't swim in the final and be at the podium, you do receive a silver medal. I've always wondered how you actually received that medal.
Yeah, perhaps just to the race part, it is I didn't qualify for the 100. Actually, Regan didn't either. Only Phil did. But just based on form and based on how we were swimming, also on the lead in, and how the things were playing out during the meets, they gave me an opportunity to swim the heats. And so if I swam well in the morning and swam well enough, then they would have given me a chance to also then swim in the nighttime in the final. But it wasn't good enough. Yep. Same thing, that freshness, the ability I just didn't have the right, finesse on the taper to make it work. And of course they're going, well, hey, this is what needs to happen. We think we need to change, and of course at that stage you're going, well, of course you do, and the brutal thing about stepping out or knowing that you're going to get left out of a relay that's a definite medal chance was extremely difficult. But he was the right one. He was the right person to swim. He was clearly in form. Finished high in the final in the 200. And so I'm really happy for him. It cut me, like it was really hard to not want to, to not be the one doing it. But he was the right person to swim the final.
Yep.
And they went on to win silver. And because we swam heats, the team that swam the heat, we also get access to a medal. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing, sort of being a relay alternate. You did your job, and that is a part of the job. You rest the people that can go and race in the nighttime, but it's not the same as standing on the podium. So I certainly didn't say no to the medal, but also it comes with kind of that caveat of a message. And I don't know who presented the main medal on the dais, but John Howard presented our medals. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but he was the one. So we got the boxing kangaroos and the medals from him.
From the
they did a small ceremony in the village, and I got to get that with the rest of the guys that had also swum, in the morning. So DK did the same in his relays.
Yep.
So we were getting medals together with him. So it was both a good experience, but a bittersweet one too.
It's sort of that similar to the guys that play all year in the AFL and get injured before the final, and I know Bob Murphy a few years ago got up. Luke Beveridge gave him his medal, but you're still not fully part of it, even though you are, if that makes any sense. So
100%.
So the Sydney Olympics finishes, and Ryan, you don't swim in another Commonwealth Games or another Olympics. Was that pretty much it for you?
Yeah, like I said, I knew straight away that it was over. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it to me. I couldn't do it to the people around me. It's such a selfish sacrifice that I made to live a life like that, but also that they then have to choose to give up and support. It's really hard on everybody around you, and they ride the bumps as much as you do. And so. I just walk completely away. I don't actually know what I did, to be perfectly honest, but for months it wasn't in my mind at all. I had no plan to officially retire, but I also had no plan to come back.
So when you message Megan after that final saying you're done, does she try and talk you out of it, or do your coaches, like when they get wind? That's just Nelly, the guard dog again. When people get wind of it, are they trying about no, come on, mate? Like you got, because you were 23.
23, yeah. Yeah, I think I think my Megan didn't. I think she knew.
Yep.
She knew it wasn't the time to try to talk me off the edge. My friends around me just were happy to spend time. We were partying and just being human, trying to be normal again. And
that word we spoke about before, normal.
Yeah, just do the things that. Can you come here? Yeah, I can. Whereas every other answer would be no. The amount of times my friends have heard no from me in my life, it's great to be able to say yes for a while.
And it can get you down because that you want to be there, but it's pretty hard when you're in a different hemisphere sometimes.
Definitely, yeah. Like I've missed, really important things. Missed my best mate's 21st, but I'm calling in from the village in Atlanta, and so I'm trying to be there, but again, it's not the same. My mum was probably the only one really. Dad had passed, and so I don't know what he thought, but I think he just wanted me to do my best.
Yep.
And mum's message was just, I just don't want you to have any regrets. And it's like going, I already have them. Like not going forward is not going to erase the ones that I already have sitting there from the stuff that I felt that I could have done better in the past. But I did my best. That's all that I could do.
Yep.
And it just wasn't good enough. And that's okay. It's taken me nearly 25 years to get to the place where that's true. But because in the moment it feels very, very different when you invest everything that you have into it. But at that point it was, I'm not walking away from here feeling like I've got, like I need to make something up to myself. I did everything I could. And, that's just the way the sport goes.
That word regret, you just mentioned it before, because I remember a former footy coach said to me, regret's a pointless emotion, but you also can't help it sometimes. You have those regrets, and trying to learn from them, that's probably the most important thing. But yeah, bloody hell, hindsight would be a good thing to know as well. But so what does a professional swimmer do? Was it 6 or 7 years you would have been a professional swimmer for?
7, yeah.
And that's quite a short career. Like you think about that in an AFL footy team. Like if you're retiring at 25 or 26, everyone's like, oh, that's a short career. So what do you do? Your daughter Audrey just coming to grab Nelly. So Nelly's pretty happy here, Audrey, I think. So what do you do to keep you, how do you go from being, I've just swum at the Olympics to being normal? Like obviously your you've got your wife back home, but do you go to work, or do you just be normal and enjoy being normal?
Yeah, I think for a period of time it was just kind of cut all the ties off and just see what happens. There was not really any plan. When you live such a structured, rigorous routine-driven life, it's nice to not have one for a while. So I really, embraced that.
Skin folds? Well, they blew out a bit?
I don't think I ever saw another caliper. And don't want to, even though I feel like I'm in okay shape.
I know they're banned. I think they're banned now.
I think you're right.
A lot of organisations.
Yeah, I think you're right. But nonetheless, I think it was just, like I said, it was just go back to saying yes to the people that mattered and do the things that were right for them. And, there's all the post-Olympic ceremonies, and you get a chance to go and do those things, and the welcome home parades and all of those, which are, fantastic. But sort of, as it started to, move more forwards, it was like going, okay, I'm just going to not think about swimming and see whether the bug comes back, because I'm not going to go and put myself in it. Let's see if it comes and chases me. And so...
and did it?
It didn't. No, it didn't at all. And so, I was doing some pre-season training and helping out the mighty Plimpton Bulldogs. And my coach, called Barrow and said, why don't you come back and, do some laps? And so I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. What have I got to lose? I'll go and see whether the process of doing it actually makes me want to do it again. And I think I got through, maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, at least a couple of cycles, and got back to moving pretty good again. And just one session we were doing out at Unley. We used to train out in summer out at Unley Pool.
Yep.
And a lot of breath holding work, and a lot of hypoxic stuff. And I just remember, like really struggling through this session and going, I don't need this.
Yep.
I'm out. And so I just got out. I didn't even finish the session. I just got out going, I'm done. Like, this is not working. I don't need it. You don't need me around here being like that, where you've got other people in the squad that are really wanting to try to have a go. They need the best people around them, and it's not me. Yep. So I knew it was over. And so again, no fanfare, no story, no emotional, video roll. I just walked off and went and did something else.
Megan would have been happy to probably spend a bit more time with you. So what do you do from there? Like, do you look for work, or did you have sponsors that you had some connections through, or like you pretty much have to start again? So
yeah, so I think there's a few things. I mean, like I said, I kept myself in touch, working through sort of parts of the back end of swimming, and since '94 really, since leaving school, and also working with my uncle, who at that stage was, consulting and doing a lot of work in high performance organizations, thinking through what environment actually helps individuals and teams and organizations to perform like that. And so I've always been fascinated in this idea of performance, and swimming was a vehicle to sort of test yourself in that space. But this was really deeply fascinating about how you could apply that also to the corporate space. So I spent as much time as I could digesting and learning that, but applying that and trying that through real world work and getting a sense of how businesses run. And, that was one part of the journey. And the other part of it was to go back and try to pick up a whole number of things that I had to say no to from old sporting days. So to get back out on the cricket field and to play some cricket, to go and have a kick of footy and bring my brother out of retirement and say, come on, let's have a go. Let's go and play a season together.
You played a year of footy with your brother?
So I played a year of footy with my brother, also out at Plimpton.
Yep, the dogs, the kennel.
Out at the kennel. And it was a brilliant year. It was such a fulfilling thing to go and play, and such a great group of fellas. And we managed to go and win a premiership, which is just, again, one of those things that, as a sporting memory, they're really, really hard to come by. And as I traveled a lot in teams, but as an individual sport, to be able to go and win something with a group of people and play, true team sport, just fantastic. Such an amazing experience. And to do it with my brother, to be wearing, my dad's number on my back, and, Jace had the reverse numbers on his, just priceless, and so I'm just so grateful whilst brain and body was still good enough to be able to hold it all together for us, that we're able to get out there and have that experience and have those memories. So, like I said, it was just, saying yes to those things, and it was great.
They're flying the Bulldogs at the moment. I think all A, Bs and Cs are in the grand final. And also, I walk past and run past that oval quite a bit. So now I know that, I can say that, I know Ryan Mitchell won a premiership there. So obviously you and Megan when did you actually you got married?
2004. Yep. So we met in 96. So we're coming up on 27 years, something like that. Married in 2004.
So obviously I teach your amazing children, Audrey and Leon. I'll never forget Audrey a couple of years ago, basically, when I was chatting with her saying, I was born in Germany. I go, what? How the hell has that happened? So tell me about how you go from your post-swimming career, getting married and then ending up in Germany.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a congruence of things. There's a number of us that were working in a similar space and had known each other internationally, and one of the crew had been recruited over to Adidas, and they were interested in setting up a new business division. And so he decided to reach out to the people that he knew that had experience in sort of that sales, marketing, international distribution, in this quantified health digital sports space, and go over and help them set up a new business division. So went over for an interview in February, and then they created a couple of roles around it, and by September we were over there in 2009, and living the life in the middle of southern Bavaria. So it was
what was your German like?
It wasn't good. Definitely wasn't good when I first went over. But we got good enough at it. So we went over on a deal saying, to Megan going, which was not a great time for her to be leaving Adelaide. Her research trajectory was really heading up in a great level. And so we'd been threatening the idea to go and live and work in Europe for about 10 years. And so it was the right opportunity at completely the wrong time. But it's turned out to be one of the best things that we ever did. So 2 years turned into nearly 11.
And both
had both of the kids in Germany. Yeah, exactly. So that sort of forces you to build an interesting vocabulary in the first 12 months about how to have children in Germany. But
does that mean they've got dual? How does that work with them ever return to Germany?
Well, we can return to Germany, all of us, as permanent residents whenever we want to, because of the time that we've lived there. But they can take up a German passport by the time they're 16. They have to make a decision. But if they do that, they've got to rescind their Australian one. So they don't allow dual citizenship, because neither Megan or I have German heritage. So, it's a shame in one sense that they haven't got access to European passports. But as Australians, you travel pretty well on the Aussie one.
I think Upper Sturt's a pretty good place to live.
It's
anyway,
an okay place for now.
So you live over there for 10 years. You moved back here 2019. What's work like for you now?
Yeah, that was a blessing and also a curse, really. After being 10 years away in those really formative years of your life, when you're having families and all of your friends are doing the same thing. We built those really tight relationships, in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we got home like a week and a half before the borders closed we got back in the end of November 2019, and our stuff got off the boat just as the borders were closing. So we managed to get all of the gear that we had with us, all of our life and belongings really, and come back here to sort of set up to what we thought was going to be free, easy, Adelaide. And, we're dealing with, all of the issues that COVID sort of thrust upon us. By that stage, I'd spent, 4.5 years, I guess, working with Adidas in this digital sport business, but also went on to do some work with their global brand strategy division, and then was out consulting and really working into this idea of organizational development through individuals, teams, and the whole organizational performance. And so I was consulting to them, but also to other clients in Europe and North America. And, servicing them from Australia when the borders are closed was pretty difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So work went from busy to zero really quite fast. But thankfully we had this fixer-upper that you're sitting in that now is a bit more fixed up than when we bought it. So I kind of project managed and sort of owner built and learnt a hell of a lot and got the kids settled back into school. And that was kind of our return to work. I say return to work was really do a different thing because, work had sort of drifted away. So it was like that for a couple of years, really. I think you only have really one chance, I think, to kind of re-enter back into to Australia. So I'm back doing something similar, working in this organisational development space. But it took a couple of years to sort of reorient to that and get going again.
Yep. You've done very well for yourself, Ryan. You've got two amazing kids who have been extremely well behaved during this interview there. I think Audrey might be even getting dinner ready as well. And Leo's just hiding around the corner here. So I guess getting towards the end of the pod, would you believe it? We've been speaking for an hour and a quarter now. Like time flies. So what I've tried to speak with my guests so far is any advice, I guess, that you've received that helped you, Ryan, or if there was anything that you wish maybe you had heard when you were a bit younger. So obviously as Nellie's trying to take away the equipment here, but I guess my big one growing up was just no what ifs, just walk off the field, not saying, oh, what if I did this, what if I did that. Is there anything that comes to mind, Ryan, about, that advice that's just stuck with you, since you've finished your swimming career?
That's a really good question. Nothing, I think, in terms of one, real pearl of wisdom that anybody said that sort of was the light bulb, but I tried to be a real sponge, and tried to really learn and mimic and try things on for myself. I was very much that sort of experiential type of person, I'm going to go and try that for myself and see how it worked, and then take the real feedback rather than the intellectual feedback. So I wasn't really never afraid to try things. And so through that process, got a lot of things wrong. But what you learn is that you're not afraid to get things wrong in order to be able to get things right. So I think that's really been, a large part of the ethos of how I've tried to do things. I've taken an unconventional path to my profession, through experience rather than through formal education. But I would go and try things, work it out, go back, learn the bits I needed. And so I have probably a bit of a life, I guess, trajectory that looks like that. So I think that would be one thing for me, is that it's too often so easy to get stuck in your head about how you think it might be. Go out and do it. Yep. So I really tried to do that. And I think the other thing that I know that really helped me, and I'm sort of know and think through this also as a parent now, watching the kids, deal with their work and how they show up, is that, not getting what you want hurts. Yep. If it's a win or a loss, or if it's a grade, or if it's a performance, or if it's something in art or theatre, but not trying your best is the thing that will eat away at you the most.
Yep.
If you're good enough, great, but you can always do your best.
Yep.
And so that's one thing that really is a sort of a big foundation for, I think, both how we think, but also how we like to parent.
Yep.
It's not easy to stand on the top step of anything, but you can always show up and put your best self forwards, and that will keep you happy and healthy, and gain you a lot of respect, and give you a lot of forward momentum. And so I think that's probably the best thing that I could think about.
I like, and being a teacher, I used to work with a teacher at my previous school, and her constant theme to the kids was only your best will do. And I think if kids do give their best, and anyway, at least you can hold your head up and go, well, I've given everything I could. And I think that comes back to effort as well. I've been a PE teacher, and there's some kids that, they're not a footballer, or they're not a basketballer, or they're not a runner, but you just try your best. Give you 100% effort. And more often than not, I reckon they're actually quite surprised with themselves, and, they actually end up doing quite well. And I just think having that mindset can be huge moving forward. So,
yeah.
I guess getting towards the end of the pod, I have a few, and this is me being a big swimming fan. And like I said to you earlier, my sister went to high school with Fran Adcock, a fellow Olympian in the backstroke. So we could do a bit of word association, or just a quick sentence or two, but just on Ian Thorpe. I know we spoke about him earlier, but obviously you got to know him quite well. Anything that comes to mind straight away about Thorpe? Aside from the big black shark suit that he made famous.
Yeah, that's right. Gentle, kind human, but just another stratosphere as an athlete.
Yep.
Absolute machine.
Yep.
It's just so impressive to watch him race.
Yep.
He's just an absolute gift, I think, to sport. So, yeah.
Yep.
Great athlete.
Michael Klim?
Oh, Clemmy, he's still a really, really, really good friend. He's clearly going through his own struggles with the CDIP,
Yes.
and that's heartbreaking for somebody that has just such a huge physical presence, but has made really, Clem the athlete, the real, center part of his identity. But for me, it's two things. I think it's his unwavering self-belief. And I think that's how you can see him tackle this thing with such great attitude, but also the humility. He's goofy and he laughs at himself and he laughs with you. But he, as much as he's achieved, he feels like the same kid that him and I are sitting in the age group, marshalling area, having a chat about where we're going.
Yep.
Just a wonderful, wonderful human.
Yep. And I do really recommend anyone out there, please read his book. I'd love to get him on the podcast long term. He'll always be the number two, my favourite swimmer I've had on the pod. But just an incredible story. Is there anything else, Ryan, that you think our listeners like? Any great stories that you've never told before, and not even the kids know? Or is there anything that's right there in that frontal lobe that we can finish the podcast with?
Oh, what can I say? What's a story? I think you asked me about KP.
Kieran Perkins, yes.
Yeah, Kate. So the KP, the best KP story I've got, and I've got a few of them actually, but probably the was when I made the first team in '94. We have a staging camp at the AIS in Canberra. We're staying in the halls of residence, which is sort of like the dormitory rooms. We get allocated our rooms, and I sort of go through and check them off of the list on the board, and I'm like, okay, Dwayne Sheehan, I don't know him. Kieran Perkins, what the hell? So I've been allocated to a room with Dwayne and Kieran, going, well, okay, this is. So I was, going, I'm not sure how this is going to go. So we have training, and then I do the courtesy phone call back to the parents and let them know everything's going good, and telling my dad and my mum, going, hey, I'm rooming with Kieran. So they're all excited that I'm rooming with Kieran. So I'm sort of sitting, after dinner, I'm in there sitting in the room. KP walks in, g'day, picks up his blankets and his pillow, walks straight back out, go, well, guess I'm not rooming with Kieran then. So off he went and changed rooms and went and roomed with his actual roomie, which was Darren Lang. So yeah, that was probably my sort of welcome to stardom with Kieran. He went on to be, a person that I both respected a lot as an athlete, but also as a person. We did a lot of stuff together, in and around the team, the leadership, but also afterwards helping to set up the Swimmers Commission and turn that into a Swimmers Association to really get a representative voice for the athletes across the country. And he was foundational in that. And I sort of took the baton over from him.
Yep.
So what sort of went from a once roomie to no roomie to being able to call someone like him actually, a friend and someone you can call on. It's a nice thing.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, mate, I've absolutely loved having you on the podcast. And like I said to you earlier, I feel sport, yes, it probably helped that I was, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old at the turn of the century. But sport for me back then, Australia, swimming, footy, it was at a high, whereas I don't think it'll ever be as good as it was back in the 2000s, especially, during the Sydney Olympics, and it's pretty exciting that there is a home Olympics in, 7 years' time on the Gold Coast. So, mate, you've got a beautiful family. Obviously, I teach Audrey and Leo. They're awesome kids, and your wife, Megan's lovely. Currently in Argentina as we speak, so on a business trip. So you've done it well here, mate. You've got the house to yourself. The kids are cooking dinner. And hopefully Megan, she's got a podcast to listen to on the way home. So, but mate, I've really enjoyed having you on Half Whit, and I've no doubt, mate, our listeners will absolutely love hearing your story. And may there be many more years to come.
Good man, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ryan. A massive thanks to Ryan for being on today's episode of Half Whit. Ryan, I think we will need a part B because there are a lot of times today where we could have kept talking and a lot of topics that we didn't even get around to covering. So you are a gem of a human being. You've got an absolutely beautiful family, and a massive thanks for being the sixth guest on Half Whit. Before I finish, I do just want to talk about today's date, September the 11th. And no, I'm not talking about two very significant events that happened 24 years ago. One being me getting my braces put on, and 2, obviously, what happened in America with the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. But today in Australia, on Thursday, the 11th of September, it is Are You OK Day. So what I'm hoping that you'll do at the end of the podcast, you'll pick up your phone, think of a person that you might not have spoken with in the last couple of weeks or couple of months, flick them a message, g'day mate, how you going? Because the fact is they might not be okay and they might be going through a bit of a tough time, and your message can make a massive difference. So flick them a message, hey mate, want to grab a coffee soon, want to go and have a hit of golf. You'll never believe this podcast I've started listening to called Half Whit. You should give it a listen and follow it on Instagram at the Matt Whitford Podcast. Or you could even say, how about those Crows going out in straight sets, which could happen in exactly, I reckon, 24 hours time. It'll be 10 p.m. So pick up the phone, message a mate. Hey mate, how you going? Are you okay? That's all I'm asking. But thank you again to everyone that is tuning in. I hope you're loving listening, because I'm loving making these episodes. But that is enough from me. I'm Matt Whitford. Thanks for listening.